Whitetail Rendezvous host Bruce Hutcheon welcomes you to episode number 139. As your host at Whitetail Rendezvous, I want to thank each and every one of you for spending your time with us today. I look forward to sharing with you in the next episode more whitetail hunting tips, techniques, and stories. Until then, keep the sun at your back, the wind in your face, and always be patient.
If you have any tips, comments, or suggestions, or what we can do to improve, because we're here to serve you, let us know. Thanks for listening to Whitetail Rendezvous podcast at www.whitetailrendezvous.com.
We're heading north of the border to meet with Calvin Buckler today. Calvin jokes that he was born by a river in a little tent. No, he was not. Calvin is the editor, producer, starring in, and creator of Boneyard TV show. It's in its fourth season of Boneyard, and it's currently airing on Wild TV up in Canada. Calvin hails out of Alberta, Canada, where the girls are wild and the whitetail buck get really big. Calvin has been an avid whitetail hunter for over 20 years, and whitetails are his favorite big game species to hunt. As well as producing the Boneyard TV show, Calvin is an event coordinator for the music festival called Pembera River Nights, which is in its 11th year. In his early 20s, he recorded albums with a metal band where he was a frontman and vocalist. At 27, he left the band and picked up a guitar and learned how to play and recorded a solo album of his own. I don't study history because I'm too busy making it. Welcome to another edition of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutcheon. And we're going to head north of the border, and we're going to head up and chat with a gentleman's name of Calvin Buckler. Yep, that's for sure. And Calvin is one heck of an interesting guy. We've been spending a couple minutes on the warm-up, and he is the co-host and producer of the Boneyard TV. And like everybody in Canada, he knows where the big bucks are, and he won't tell me either. So maybe we can draw some good secrets out of Calvin while he's on the show. So Calvin, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having
Calvin,
me.
You're welcome. You were telling me in the warm-up that you're from about 100 miles or an hour west of Edmonton. Is that pretty much where you're at?
That's correct, yeah.
And what kind of country is that? Is that hill, brush, or is that agriculture, river bottom? Help me understand the type of terrain you're hunting in.
Well, just as you come out of the city, it's pretty much flat land. There are some hills and stuff like that, but we are, like, from my house, I'm probably 3 hours from the foothills in the mountains, like Jasper National Park, or the Rocky Mountains. But I'm about 10 miles from a river, so we're, the terrain changes, but it's fairly flat. It's boreal forest, so there's a mixed forest of, spruce and pine and poplars. And the whitetails really like the poplar ridges, when you go further up north towards Swan Hills.
For anybody that hasn't hunted north of the border, tell us what they should really expect if they're hunting, what I'm going to say, early season, mid-season, or during the rut. Those 3 seasons, what should a person expect to encounter weather-wise and deer behavior-wise?
Well, like I found early, like my season starts September 1st, and if you can get them in that first week, like if you can pattern them, you got a chance. As soon as they seem to lose their velvet, it's super tough. There's more bush where I'm at. Like once you get towards red deer, like that's the middle of the kind of province, then there's less trees. The terrain changes and it's big open fields, but the deer usually aren't as big once you get further south. There are some big bucks down there, but here that you're hunting, there's some big chunks of bush, like, a mile by a mile, and you're sitting on the edge of that or trying to get into there and hunt them. And it can be really difficult with a bow, whereas once you get into November, where that's the rifle season usually starts in my zone, because there's a bunch of different zones, then you can, then you have a better chance with the rifle because you don't have to be so close, obviously, right? So you hunt the food sources, and, that's kind of what I do.
Now, what are your peak rut times?
Usually it starts around November 7th and goes till the 15th or the 20th. So my brother and I got one on the last day. That was, I don't know how many years. It was a big one. It was a good one, like grossed 184, just a beautiful old buck. And it was the last day he was coming across the field at last light with his head down. And, he was looking for a hot doe or on a hot doe. But usually that 7th till the 15th is when they're really moving. You can have a good chance of seeing a big buck that you'd never see. So.
Well, thanks for that background. So everybody that lives, in what I say the lower 48, we're in the U.S., and we got 37 or so states that we have good huntable populations of whitetail. And a lot of guys that I talk to, they want to get up north. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to bring somebody in like yourself, Calvin, and talk about, whitetails in the north. But let's talk right now. Let's talk about one thing you're really passionate about is through filming, you're sharing the adventure and trying to put the people right in the blind, or the trail, or standing on a fence row, or, glassing out of your truck or a hillside. And let's talk about that right now. Let's talk about Boneyard TV, how it started, why it started, and what your goal is in transferring information to your audience.
Yeah, it started out kind of as a bit like in spite, because I had a Canadian show ask me to use one of my songs on my solo album. I had 2 albums with a metal band when I was a young lad, and then I did a solo album, and it didn't work out. And but he asked us to film for him. We bought a camera. I filmed 160-inch 4-point whitetail, like it was a giant, at 20 yards. Couldn't get a shot, and he looked at it and said, he didn't care. And I was blown away. Jason and I were just like, we thought we had video gold, and then we just thought, well, let's start our own. And then, this is our 4th season, it kind of progressed into, we're trying to teach people to get out of the truck and into the field, because that's what gives hunters a bad name around here, is these guys driving around pounding them out the window, and they just don't care where they shoot them, right? They just will shoot wherever they figure. And it's weird how a grown man that's usually sensible, if they see big antler, they just lose all, common sense, and they will shoot,
Now, what is your DNR or your field, whoever's in charge of your critters up there, the Crown, what is their take on this quote-unquote tradition of, hunting thousands of acres out of the pickup truck?
Well, they don't mind. Like it's just part of it, and you get up north towards Swan Hills. It's huge chunks of bush, and it's just lease roads, like oil field roads. And it's legal to shoot off them, and all that. But it's the guys that are shooting stupidly. There's a house there or whatever around these farmers that they really frown on, and then what happens is what I think is the worst thing is when you shoot it out the window. Guys think they missed. I found so many dead deer. You see the birds, you walk in, there's a nice buck, and somebody probably either they drove away because they were scared they were going to get caught, or they thought they missed because there's not one drop of blood. But that don't mean nothing, like you lots of times you hit them and they're laying there dead. So with the show, we're trying to promote to get out of the truck and into the field and experience nature, not just kill one, kill a big one, because everybody thinks it's just so easy to kill a big one, and it's not. So.
Yeah, and you shared with me that if somebody wants to watch your film from down here, or your show, pardon me, it's on Wild TV up in Canada. Plus, you can just go to his website, boneyardtv.com, and you can watch all the episodes there, because it is a cultural different thing. I've been fortunate to hunt in Canada, and the first time I was up there, they said, well, we drive a lot with a truck, and then just depends what we're seeing. We do have stands and everything. It was really different, because I've seen a lot of deer from the truck, but as far as harvesting a deer, that isn't what we do down here. And so it's a big change. It's a cultural change, right. And you have to get people used to that. And I love the idea of what you're doing. Teach people to get out of the truck, and because
it is an issue up there, and you know,
yeah, it's not every hunter is doing that. It's just there's lots that do, and they never were taught anything different, you know. So
right, it's a tradition. Wisconsin deer drives. I mean, we would drive, you know, hundreds and hundreds of acres. And back in the day when I started back in 1996, we didn't have to worry about going to somebody's barn because they knew we were driving their bottoms or whatever. You know, it was just, that's what we did. And we'd have 20, 30 guys, you know, spread out, you know, driving, and then 5 or 10 guys, depending on, you know, where they're going to come out, you know, standing. And it might take a couple of hours. I mean, you know, it was, but that's the tradition, and it still happens today. So let's get back to Boneyard TV and talk about some of the fun experiences you've had, and let's take those experiences and wind into lessons learned about hunting whitetails.
I guess one of the lessons I learned was the biggest whitetail I ever got was sitting in a ground blind, well, a brush pile, and you know, and to watch a deer, you know, in there just without them knowing you're there is so cool, you know, and just the deer kept looking back to the trees, and out walked the big buck, and I took my shot, and, you know, I got him. And I think that's where I learned that it's, you know, way nicer to be sitting and watching and experience nature. Right. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. And down here, a lot of guys spend a lot of time in tree stands and in ground blinds, especially with the youth. You know, sometimes it's easier just to pop up a ground blind and get it all brushed in and then hunt that way, because they can't, if they're moving around or doing whatever, they can't be seen.
Yeah, and I think the thing is with the trail cameras now, you can find those deer. Like sometimes they do appear, like especially in the rut, you'll just all of a sudden there's a new deer there. But like in September, like if you start putting out trail cameras in, you know, June, July, you find them big deer, and they usually don't move around much. Like here anyway. One of our hunters last year got a really nice whitetail, like a beauty, and we posted the picture. And it traveled 7 miles, like it crossed the main highway and went 7 miles. And November 3rd, he got it. And the guy in August had pictures of that deer in velvet. So I was surprised it would move that far, because there is but that's how far it moved. And I mean, it was the same deer. I mean, it had split brows. It was unmistakable. Right. So it was pretty amazing. I was surprised by that, but usually in that September, that first week, you can really get a good chance of harvesting one, because it is a giant area. Like Alberta is the size of Texas, right? I think Texas is a little bit bigger, but it's a huge area, right? So there's a lot of different zones, but yeah.
Now, how big is the area that you basically hunt? You know, I'm sure you go to other places, but your home area, how many square miles is it?
Well, usually it's pretty big. Like I'll put out, let's say 10 trail cameras in July and try and start locating deer. I have probably 4 main spots I hunt for whitetails. I got, that are real good. And then, you know, just trying to find that, you know, 180, it seems ridiculous, but I've never got a picture of a 180-inch whitetail on my trail camera. I've got some 160s, but never got one even on a trail cam picture. So when guys
they're there, right? They're there.
Yeah, they're there. They're there. Oh yeah. Like just by Evansburg, a guy shot a 4-point that was 182 or something, like just gigantic. Yeah, it's huge, right? So and then, you know, Brandon, where he got his buck, it's 2 miles from my house, right? And it was 186, non-typical, but just a beauty. So, you know, and I'd already harvested my deer, and I was coming home from work, come around the corner. It had to be at least 160-inch whitetail, you know, runs into the trees like he was on a doe. And I mean, he stood there like it was, you know, I just didn't have enough time to get the video camera out, but he was a beauty. So.
Hey, let's clarify something. You said a couple of different times a 4-point. So to us down here in the States, that would be an 8-pointer. Correct?
Exactly. Yeah, it's an 8-point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We don't. Yeah, we always just call it 4-point. The brow and then 2 points, and the main beam is a .2 we count, right? So.
Right. And Western County, I live in Colorado, and so when we come out here, it's a 4x4 or 6x6 or whatever,
right.
And that's how we count it. But most of the guys that I know, they call it 8.10 or 12 or whatever it rolls out to be. Let's talk about why you started hunting in the first place.
I basically was raised on a farm. I got a pellet gun when I was I can't remember how old, 8. And then I got a 22 when I was 13, and a greyhound and white shepherd cross, and I hunted coyotes. And I shot a duck out of the air the first day I got my 22. Don't tell anybody that.
No way.
Yeah, it was a miracle. And then with my 2 friends, they were there to see it. But the coyotes is what I started coyote hunting, and I just loved it. Like with my dog, it was just when I turned 16, got my license, we'd just cruise and hunt coyotes, and he was an awesome dog. Now you can't hunt them here with dogs, but when I was 16, you could, and man, we had a lot of fun. That dog was a killer.
Wow.
Yeah, he was something else. But I had another one after that, a greyhound and Irish Wolfhound cross, but it was a female, but she would just catch them, and that was it. She wouldn't kill them.
Yeah, she'd catch them by herself.
Yeah, oh yeah, that was just one dog, but she'd just catch him and then just stand there, and they'd bark at her, and then she'd run back to the truck. So, but it was fun to watch the race, right?
Well, yeah, and people, if you spend any time in Canada, especially in the wintertime, I saw an Irish wolfhound one time named Titan, and I said, "What do you have him for?" He said, "To catch critters."
Mm-hmm.
Just flat out catches them, and I go, "Oh," he says, "Yeah, it works."
Yeah,
it works. I was amazed at that, and we don't see that much anymore, especially down here.
Yeah. No, it's and then I just I didn't really hunt a lot of ducks. I was just more a whitetail hunter. Like I just that was my thing. I always just, to me, the different antlers, they can be way up or way out, or whereas an elk is an elk, a moose is a moose rack. They all look the same. Some are just bigger.
Right.
And that's why that medieval looking whitetail bladed is just, I don't know, it's something and then they're so spooky, it's just something to me, when you harvest one with a bow, it's, you won, kind of. So
let's talk about your 3 secrets of harvesting 150 or better whitetail, a mature, let's just say 4.5-year-old, forget the points, because I personally believe we get wound up in that too much. I'm guilty. I'm guilty, but mature 4.5-year-old whitetail. And what's 3 secrets that you found over the years that you want to share with the listeners?
I guess the main thing is finding one is obviously the key to getting one. And then it's the time in the field. Eventually that deer is going to step out in the daylight. Like I found, if you hunted them long enough, you'll get a chance at them. And then being a good shot. I think I've had so many people tell me they've seen this great big deer and missed, and I've missed one time. And it's the same with the bow. Like if you can't shoot, you get this opportunity on this beautiful animal and then you miss it. It's just terrible, right? Because you spend all that time in the field and then you get the opportunity and then you can't shoot. I think it's the onus on the hunter to be able to shoot. Like I think anything within 200 yards of you with a rifle, if you can't hit it, like if you can't hit a 6-inch circle with a high-powered rifle at 200 yards, that to me, anybody should be able to do that. like a grown man, like even a 16-year-old. Like, and with a bow, you got to really know your distances, like yourself. If you can only shoot 30 yards, that's shoot 30 yards. Don't shoot farther than that. So, in practice, lots of guys, they haven't shot the rifle all year. They get out there, and then this giant deer walks out, boom, 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 and it runs away, and they're like, "What happened?" So that's what I think is really a big factor. Is when you have the opportunity, you got to be able to hit it.
Now, what kind of gear do you use? What kind of bow? What kind of rifle?
Hoyt is the bow I've been using for the last 3 years. I really like it, and I have a Browning 270 that I bought when I was 16 years old, and I still hunt with that. And I've shot moose, elk, whitetails, muleys, coyotes, one wolf with it, and it's worked on all of those. But again, it's not a long range rifle. Like past 300 yards, it's the hitting power isn't quite as good. as you know, you get a 300 Magnum, it's way, you know, you can shoot way out there.
Right.
So,
what kind of scope do you have on your rifle?
a Leupold 3.5 by 10 power with a 50 mil end. Some guys don't care about the big end, but I like to, you know, the little bit bigger field of view. But I hunted with an old fella that he had an old Weaver scope that you could barely see out of, and he was a deadly shot. 30-06 pump, and he could shoot. So, you know.
Let's talk about finding one. What are some of the steps that you do up there in Canada to nail down your top 5 in your hit list?
I guess you can, in Alberta, you can't bait them, but you can feed them. So what I do is if I have I'll dump a pail of oats in the corner of a field, usually the best, or along a field edge, because they travel those field edges, and then you see that they're there, right? And then you try and, I usually then set up some more cameras and try and see where they're coming from. And that's usually the best way to find them, right? Is because I've done that before. You just set up a camera randomly on the edge of a field, and you'll get some pictures. But as soon as you put some oats down there, some type of bait, usually the deer will come to it, and you'll see what's there, you know. And then
no, wait, hold on a second. I'm confused. You said you can't bait them, but you can feed them.
Yeah, you can feed.
You
yeah, you can feed them, but you have to be, I think, 200 yards from where you fed them. You know what I mean? So whatever.
Oh, okay. So you're putting the oats out in the corner of the field and the fence line and all the good cover, but you have to be set up 200 yards away from that.
Yeah, or, you know, you can do it in July and August, and then once September hits, you just don't do it anymore, right? Like that's, you can let the bait run out. You know, like once you know they're there, then you just try and pattern them, right?
Right. So with a rifle, that's not so bad. Can you feed them during the rifle season?
You can, but you're not supposed to hunt over it. So there's a real fine line there of, you know what I mean? Like, and the thing is, like, it's like the one farmer had swath grazing, so there's like 50 deer out there. So, you know, is he feeding them, or, you know, swath graze oats for the cattle, but the cattle weren't in there yet. So, you know what I mean? Like that's, and then the one guy was hunting that. So it's the Fish and Wildlife officers here don't really, I don't think they care that much as long as you're not on Crown land baiting, you know?
Right.
And they say it can change their patterns or whatever, but yeah, it's usually late November is when you go to the food sources, right? So whether it's a second cut alfalfa field or some guy spilled some grain, you know, like that's one year, I don't know, that's about 15 years ago, the guy spilled a bunch of grain in the field. My buddy sat there and we got one. So, you know.
Now, what about food? Let's just jump into this now. What about food plots in Canada? How does that work?
That's still considered your baiting. If you plant it specifically, like in Alberta, the only provinces you can't bait is Alberta and Manitoba. The rest of them you can bait. Like you can put out whatever you want. So
if I put, let's say I've got oats out there and I grow it and, you know, then I harvest it and whatever left over is left over. And so I see a buck that's kind of using that field and then I hunt them and kill them. So that's not legal?
Well, if you harvested the oats or half of it or whatever, then that's legal. You know, that's what I mean. It's such a fine line. Like, you know, I think that's they don't want you seeing you dump like a truckload out by Swan Hills in the Crown land. So,
right.
Whereas on private land, they don't really care. Like the Fish and Wildlife officer I've talked to, you know, he just flat out said, you know, for kids especially, he said, it's so nice. You get them in the ground blind, they're seeing deer, it's, you know, and then they're leaning, they can shoot. It's just way nicer when they're where they're on a good food source and they're actually coming out. So,
right.
You know, in 2013, when we first moved to this place, I had 15 different bucks on my place and they winter killed and I had 5.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was unreal. Like it snowed like 3 feet and then it rained and snowed and they died. Like all the old bucks died. I had 3 mature bucks that I thought, oh, this is going to be the most amazing season next season. They all died.
Let's talk about predation. Talk to me about coyotes, bears, and wolves.
Yeah, in our area, there isn't a lot of wolves until you get further north, like to Whitecourt, which is another hour north. But there's cougars. Like I've had trail cam pictures of cougars down in the bottom of my field, and my friend this summer had one. He's 2 miles from me, had a cougar. And I actually went on a cougar hunt with Big Cat Adventures, and we treed 3 cougars in 2 days. And we passed up probably 5 sets of tom tracks because they know by the size of the track, because there's a quota, like in a certain area, there's, let's say, 4 toms and 3 females you can harvest. So once they're harvested out of that area, you can't, and obviously everybody goes for the toms because they're bigger. And like we tried for a tom in the one area, but we couldn't find one. So we went to where there was female cats. And then we found, like, we passed up 5 different sets of tracks because we knew they were toms, and then treed 3 cats. One was a young tom though, so we let him go. And then the other 2 females we took. So, but
coyotes?
Coyotes, yeah, they will if the snow gets deep enough, or if the deer get weak enough. But I think they're more when the deer are small, they can take them down. But I think a full-grown deer, it's pretty tough for a coyote to take down a full-grown deer.
Now, how about your black bear population on fawns, or Yeah,
there's 40,000 black bears in Alberta, and a lot of that's further north, but still. I've shot one on my place with a bow, and they are around, like they're in this area for sure, like along the river and stuff. But I'm sure they take their fair share, yeah. And on the moose, because there's moose and elk too, they definitely take their toll on them.
So let's talk about just flipping back to your younger days when you were a musician. What are some of the things you learned from being a musician that helped you, one, be a videographer and a whitetail hunter?
I guess I always was with the music. I never started the band I got into, the metal band. I've always had long hair, and the guy said, "You got long hair, you should try and sing for my band." And so I went and sang, and I could do it. And then I didn't start playing guitar till I was 27, because I'm 44 years old now. So then I started editing my own music because I thought I should learn how to do that, so they couldn't fool me. And then it just transitioned into the editing and the filming. Like I like to create things, and I spend on each episode, let's say 100 hours at least, editing it down, and that's for 22 minutes and 30 seconds. And it's amazing how you can squish it into, like the first season, I would have, let's say, 40 minutes of footage to make into 22 minutes and 30 seconds. Now in the 4th season, I'm getting like 3 hours of footage and squishing it into 22 minutes, 30 seconds. And it just makes it way better. Like, it's just so much quicker and smoother and funner to watch. Like, instead of, to you watching a whitetail walk across a field, like you filmed it for, 3 minutes is amazing, this beautiful whitetail. But to the viewer, it's got to keep moving, right? Like,
yep.
You can't, those shots are nice, but they're not for 2 minutes. So,
yeah,
you need to cut away. I think if you watch any like Jury Outdoors and stuff like that, they're just, it's just ripping along there. So,
yeah. Hey, one thing, Gary Gillette, have you ever heard of Gary, or do you know him?
No, I don't know.
Okay. The hunting film tour. So take that, make a note. He's out of Canada, and he's traveling North America with something called the Hunting Film Tour. One of their sponsors is Killcliff. I've had Gary on the show, and Baker Levitt and Michael Heil, some of the guys from Killcliff, and it's a heck of a thing. So, when you get a chance, this is a shout out for Killcliff and Gary Gillette and Hunting Film Tour. But hey, listeners, take a look at that, because they get some unique things. And the thing I like about it is people submit to Hunting Film Tour, and they'll pick up 5, 10 minute, 15-minute short videos about hunting, fishing, a lot of different things, and it's really interesting. So there you go. So Calvin, I can't believe it, but we're at the time of the show where you get a couple of minutes here to give shout outs to friends, family, sponsors, people that helped you out along the way, or somebody you want to say thanks to. So you get the mic.
Oh, I want to thank Trev Fury, Jason Acorn, my partner and co-host, Kent Buckler. They do a lot of work for the show. I guess Rocky, Weatherby, Hoyt. We just picked up Hoyt, which was really cool. We've started our own line of trail cameras, and arrows, the killing cam and the killing sticks. You can see all that on the boneyardtv.com. They're high quality carbon arrows. Our cameras are good. The arrows I'll put up against anybody's arrows on the market. We've shot them for a year. We've killed 7 animals with them. And we have tournament shooters, like we have tournament series arrows, and they're loving them. They're shooting good for them. So, yeah. And then, what should I think? Paterni's, another sponsor of ours. They've been with me a few years, and thank you. And my wife and my family for putting up with me hunting all the time.
Calvin, on behalf of Whitetail Rendezvous and all my listeners throughout North America, thank you so much for spending time with us and just sharing some of the things that make hunting north of the border very exciting and a great adventure to enjoy. So, Calvin, thank you.
Thank you.
As your host at Whitetail Rendezvous, I want to thank each and every one of you for spending your time with us today. I look forward to sharing with you in the next episode more whitetail hunting tips, techniques, and stories. Until then, keep the sun at your back, the wind in your face, and always be patient.
If you have any tips, comments, or suggestions, or what we can do to improve, because we're here to serve you, let us know. Thanks for listening to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast at www.whitetailrendezvous.com.